Here we go. This is going to be super cool. Sasho and I have already been riffing on a few different things. This is going to be a wonderful hour. I was just saying to Sasho that I've just lost so much speed myself over the past 15 years. I've sort of trained myself to go slow. I've been so obsessed with technique and just trying to get everything right that my body has probably just started working slower and slower. So this is just going to be a really, really fascinating hour. And Sasho, I'll actually let you introduce yourself and just, talk about how you've sort of got to where you are today, because it's such a fascinating story. I've watched, so many of your previous webinars. I've been at the PGA show and seen you with, Chris Como and some of the best coaches in the world riffing it up, which has just been wild. But do you want to just introduce yourself and how you got here today? And then just maybe start chatting about what Stack System is.
Sure. So I'm a professor by trade, a sports biomechanics prof. I did my PhD thesis on customizing shaft stiffness to a golfer's swing. And, kind of a math geek, physics, engineering person, but I went through kinesiology as my background, but I picked away a computer science course, engineering courses. So I have this, love of math and physics, but also really interested in maximizing athletic performance. So my research has really focused on that specifically in golf. I spent 10 years as a track and field coach doing strength and conditioning stuff. And that really influenced a lot of the work I'm doing now. I do consulting for FootJoy, a lot of consulting for Ping, a whole bunch of entities in the golf industry. And I started out doing a lot of instructor education. There was a bit of, I was kind of reached out to saying, hey, look, there might be a gap here. We like some of the stuff you're doing. Can you come give us a presentation? And that really, really grew. And then I started working with coaches and tour players. And then I started working with tour players myself. Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, most recently. I just was down in Nashville with Victor, helping him with Joe, sorting some stuff out. Knock on wood. I don't know how he's doing today exactly, but last week was pretty good.
Amazing.
And so kind of a culmination of all that, through lots of different angles, I developed the Stack System with my partner, Marty Jertson, at Ping, an amazing golfer, played in 6 majors, an amazing engineer. I think he's got 120 something patents. So I had these ideas for how I'd like to do speed training. And he come up with this really awesome design for a club, and we put everything into an app. Our third partner did a lot of the app design for TrackMan. So we brought him on board, and we got this really cool system now. So instead of me like doing one-off programs and training tour players, this scaled up. So now everybody can have kind of access to their own customized programming through the app. And so that's kind of my story, kind of the app story. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic, and probably really came to prominence when Matt Fitzpatrick won the US Open last year. That was 2 years ago. That was really sort of a breakout moment for like showing you what's possible to take someone like very ordinary in terms of club speed, carry distance, and like literally take them up into the upper echelons.
Yeah, that was really was the ideal case study if you wanted to convince someone that the product works.
Yeah.
And the guy's at the time, he was 26, takes his game very seriously, doesn't leave any stone unturned. And, through his peak potential club head speed increasing years, through university up to 26, really stayed at 112. It was the last little thing that he needed to push him over the edge. And, by the time he was playing in the US Open, he was, playing at around 120. So to go from 112 to 120 and not really lose much accuracy, it obviously helped. And, such a nice guy. After he won the US Open, to get up there and say, hey, the stack really helped. That certainly helped us.
Yeah, no, it was huge, and he's also partners with Arcos, one of our partners as well. So he, takes it incredibly seriously. So for everyone out there, if you've got any questions as Sasho is going through this presentation, please just type them into the Q&A, and I'm more than happy to ask them. You can either ask them as we're going here, or we can also save them for the end. But do you want to dive into it, Sasho, and give us the presentation? This would be great.
Okay, I'll share my screen in a second. So, I give tons of presentations on speed, and I'm constantly reworking things to find the sweet spot. So, Baden had mentioned that probably the majority of people on here are golfers looking to get faster. So I've put in a lot of practical content, but I'm a prof, I'm a scientist at heart, and I feel like in order to really appreciate some of the more practical stuff, I like to sprinkle in a little bit of research and science. So I do really put a lot of pride in trying to explain these concepts as best I can. So hopefully everybody hangs on. I'm not sure if you need a beer or a coffee, but I'll pick one of those and let's get into this presentation.
Fantastic. This is going to be great. It's 6 a.m. here, Sasho, so I think I'll choose the coffee instead of beer.
Yeah, nice. Thumbs up there, Baden, if things look perfect. Okay, so this presentation's on the fundamentals of speed generation and training. And we're going to work through a little bit of science. I'm going to try to give you guys lots of practical information, and hopefully this is a well-invested hour of your time. As soon as I can get there we go. I'll click in now. So in order to understand how golfers generate speed, and therefore how we can improve speed, we need a bit of a framework in our head. At least that's how I operate. So I want to share that with you. And the way these frameworks, it's called the deterministic model, works is you start with the objective, the thing you want to improve at the top. So in this case, it's driver club head speed. And then as you go down in levels, the lower levels cause or influence the upper level. So we can kind of work through, and I keep this model in my brain anytime I'm working with a player. And when I'm listening to theories from other coaches to say, okay, well, is what you're suggesting going to increase their club head speed? If it is, then it has to fit into this model. Okay, why do I think it's going to influence club head speed? So the first thing down is this concept of energy delivered from the golfer. And it's a function of four things: hand path length, force along the hand path, amount of club rotation, and torque about the rotation axis. These things can be measured I'm in my lab right now. And these things can be measured. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. We'll see if this works, Baden. And
yep.
You let me know if we're still rolling. Okay, so those four things literally add up to club head speed. So if I'm in my lab and I measure someone swinging club and I measure those four things, literally the physics equations say we can add them together. And I'll give a little demonstration here of what I'm talking about. So let's say we'll simplify it. We'll step back from the golf swing for a second. Let's say I'm trying to increase the speed of this stack head. Okay, here's my hand path. That's the distance my hand is going to travel as I'm moving this. Well, I could move this through a really short hand path, get some speed, or I could move it through a longer hand path and get more speed. I could apply more force over that distance that I'm moving my hand as well. So I could go over a long hand path and move it kind of slowly because I'm not applying much force, or I could apply more force. Those two things make up the linear work on the club. We'll look at this more in a second. And then we have the torque that's applied and the angle that the club moves through. So I could move this through a small angle and get some speed, or I could move it through a bigger angle and get more speed, or I could apply more torque, right? So those four things, one of those four things needs to be influenced if I think something's going to increase club head speed. I have to understand which of those four variables is going to be impacted. Flip back over as long as this is working. Judge. Clicked on the wrong one. There we go. I'll get the end of this.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect.
I'm on. We got a good system going now. Think. So if we think of what's going to affect those four variables or the energy delivered to the club from the golfer, we've got swing technique, and that's what I'm going to focus a lot on today. We've got things like the ground reaction forces. I've got a couple of nice slides on that. Segment sequencing in transition. Got some good drills on that. Center of mass motion, weight shift, grip, posture, stance width. All of those things are considered swing technique, and they can influence one of those four factors. We also have percent of max effort. Most easily, you can think of that as how fast are you trying to swing. So if I said to you, hey, Baden, swing at 30%, well, that's not going to be as fast as I say swing at 80%. So that percent of max effort can really influence club head speed. This can get a little more nuanced. Even if I'm suggesting to somebody, hey, swing at 100%, there might be a mental block. So even though they have the neuromuscular capabilities, the coordination to swing at 100 miles per hour, for some reason we can't get that effort out, and they're stuck at 90. And I see this happening a lot, mostly with LPGA players. I think it's very helpful if you play a lot of sports growing up. You do things that involve maximum effort, could be lifting, sprinting, throwing. I think if you miss that in your development, your athletic development, then you need some help unlocking that. So it's not just about how much effort am I trying to swing with, but think, are you even capable of it? And then at the very bottom is physical training. So physical training can influence all these things on the top, and that includes stuff like lifting weights, throwing medicine balls, flexibility and mobility training. And the most important thing, this is what I've focused most of my efforts on. This is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you're a golfer, something we call variable inertia speed training, essentially training with the stack. So when you train with the stack, we can influence your percent effort, help you break through that barrier. We can improve swing technique, and we can change the overall capabilities of the neuromuscular system, how fast your nervous system fires, how your muscle fibers contract. So overall, this is considered neuromechanics. Hot topic. A lot of stuff out there on ground reaction forces. I could spend 60 slides on it, but I've worked it down to 2. Okay, so I think we're going to get the most important things out of understanding what ground reaction forces are. So a golfer's interaction with the ground is based on this concept of a ground reaction force. Simply, the ground pushes on the athlete in response to the athlete's actions. Okay, you may have, for any serious golfers that are tuning in, there seems to be 2 camps, and it may be a bit extreme. One side says, don't worry about the ground, it doesn't do anything. We're responsible for everything, the ground's just there. And then whole other side that have done a really good job investing in force plate technology and really taking advantage of the understanding of how a golfer can use the ground. Okay, maybe both go a bit extreme. I fall in the middle, probably a little closer to the fact that force plates and using them effectively can be very helpful. It is important. So even though it's a ground reaction force, we can use it to our advantage. So the nervous system is going to tell the muscles to contract. The contracting muscles are going to try to produce a joint rotation. I'm going to look really small here. I'm not going to stop sharing my screen. But it may be, for those of you who are familiar with Zoom, you might be able to rearrange the screen size yourself. Not sure how this will work for the recording data, but I'm going to give this a go since I don't want to break the flow. So I'm going to tell my my body that I want to contract my muscles to externally rotate my foot. And if the ground's not there, my foot externally rotates. That's not going to help me swing any faster. But with the ground in the way, instead of my foot moving relative to the ground, now my body's going to move. So I'm contracting those muscles. The joints will want to rotate, in this case, external hip rotation. And the ground prevents that foot from moving, so then my body moves. Okay, so the muscles are the cause of that, but without the ground, I would never see any motion. And in that ground interaction is going to both translate my center of mass, so it's going to move me around, but also rotate me, which is the important thing for the golf swing. And I've got a little animation here showing how ground reaction forces help add speed, and they also help orient the golfer's body into a position where we can deliver the club face more consistently. So we don't need the ground to develop speed, but we need the ground to develop a sufficient level of speed to play decent golf. If my club head speed with the driver was 100 miles an hour, regularly standing on the ground, and you drop me out of an airplane or out of a spaceship or in a vacuum where I had no external surface to push off of, my best guess would be able to generate, with some training to get used to that really weird movement, about 60 miles an hour of club head speed. Well, I'm not going to be able to play any courses with any level of success with a 60 mile per hour club head speed. Not only that, but I'm going to have my body in a really weird orientation at impact in order to generate that club head speed. We need the ground to add speed into the system, okay? And our muscles help us do that with the ground, but then we need to get that speed out to the club, okay? So the ground can help add speed. It's torques from the ground reaction force that changes the rotational speed of the golfer. So if you can see in this animation, I'm showing these blue vectors here. You see my mouse moving, Baden?
Yep.
So those are the ground reaction forces. They're helping add rotational speed into the system. And we're showing the forces and torques being applied at the grip here by the golfer. It's up to the golfer, even though they get speed into the system, to apply forces to the grip to get it out to the club, okay? And I'll just pause this for 1 second when it gets flipped around. You can see how these ground reaction forces are angled. They're angled to help rotate me in the horizontal plane. The forces are also helping rotate me in the frontal plane. So we're adding speed into the system from the ground, and then we're going to try to get that speed out to the club. So we're almost there through the thicker science stuff. It's important to have a general idea of this stuff in our head so we can understand some of the drills and concepts I discussed later. Feel like if you watch the FedEx Cup this week, you'll hear some commentators use some words that aren't quite appropriate. So we're going to take a second to sort out what is power, what is energy in the golf swing, and maybe hopefully in a decade or so everybody's using it in the correct way. Probably not, but at least the folks listening to this webinar will be. So energy, kinetic energy, is what we want. The more energy we can put into the club head at impact, the faster our club head speed is going to be. That's what we want to do. Power is the rate at which we generate or transfer energy. And a lot of times those are used interchangeably, but they're not. They're very different things. One is the rate at which the other one's changing. Power is the rate at which energy is changing. Think of filling a bucket with a hose. The amount of water that ends up in the bucket is energy. So at the top of the backswing, the bucket's empty. And really all we care about is filling up the bucket. Okay, so this bucket, if we look at it right now, it's got 121 miles per hour worth of energy in it. If we develop that energy really quickly, like if we fill it up with a fire hose in a fraction of a second, that's a lot of power. okay? But at the speeds even PGA Tour players play at, we don't necessarily need to maximize power. There's a lot of room to either have a really powerful swing or a swing that's less powerful, but still fills up the bucket. So I like to think of a Jon Rahm. He would be probably the most powerful if we measured the peak power he was generating in the golf swing. He'd probably be the most powerful professional golfer up to now, simply because of how short his swing is, how quickly he gets that energy in the bucket filled up, versus a player who's actually a little faster than Jon Rahm, Jake Knapp, but has this really kind of slow tempo swing. So he's a longer swing, not quite a garden hose, I wouldn't say, but he gradually fills up the bucket. These are relative. They're both very powerful athletes. Jon Rahm would have a higher level of power. Okay. And I wanted to show you, put this in the context of an actual swing. So those four things I talked about: force along the hand path length, the torque, and the rotation angle. Those things do work on the club, and that 100% equals the change in energy, which gives us our club head speed. So if we look at these four things, I want to put them in context of a 100-mile-per-hour driver swing, which is going to mean there's going to be about 220 joules in your driver. Linear work is about 180 joules, angular work's about 40, gravity's 5, and drag's about -5. Why I'm showing you this, why I think it's important, I have conversations, at least on a monthly basis, with instructors or players who think gravity is really important, who think a certain swing element's more important for generating speed than another one. Looking at these things in context is really helpful. So if you were to look at this, Baden, would you say that gravity is really going to be a big contributor?
No.
No. And that's one take home from this. So linear work, that's the force applied along the hand path. Angular work is the torque applied over the angle you rotate the club. Gravity is just, if I were to drop this, how fast would the club be going if literally I just dropped it from the top of my swing, right? And then drag is slowing down the club head due to air resistance. If we flip these into mile-per-hour equivalents, linear work's about 82, angular work's 18, gravity's only contributing 2 miles per hour, and drag, we're losing about 2 miles per hour. And what's most important is that no one can really manipulate gravity or drag more than somebody else, right? The best driver available out there, Ping's got some amazing turbulators, might give you a 1 mile per hour advantage over some other products, okay? But we're not going to see a huge difference. There's no one out there that's using gravity more to their advantage to swing faster. If they did, they would be sacrificing a whole lot of speed in these other categories that are responsible from the golfer. So linear work, the force along the hand path, and the hand path length are the biggest contributors. And if two people have big differences in club head speed, it's most likely due to that force they apply along the hand path and the length of the hand path. And see through this one. Here's a little correlation I did, measured 76 golfers and did a prediction of their club head speed from the average force. So when I swing this golf club, I'm moving my hands through an arc. The average force applied along that arc of the hand path predicts most of the differences in club head speed, okay? Telling you this now, getting into the weeds a bit so that we start focusing on drills, thinking about drills, this is a key area we want to focus on, okay? It's more important to think about the force we're putting into moving this grip linearly than it is to thinking about how much we rotate the club. That's why you can see someone like, say, Xander Schauffele, who doesn't quite reach parallel with his irons, right? He doesn't have a lot of angular movement of the club, but he still hits his irons a really, really long way. And here's a visual showing that. So just don't get caught too much into all these numbers down here. I just want you to watch the animation so you can see at the start, this is from the start of the downswing, we're looking at a driver face on want you to see how slowly the force in the grip builds up. It's going to be that red arrow that's going to poke out. So it's quite small, but it gradually builds and it becomes its highest around impact. It's that force and the distance that the hand travels. So this hand path length here was about 1.6 meters. That might be someone like Tony Finau. Someone like Bubba Watson might be closer to 1.8 meters, have a longer hand path. John Rahm would be even shorter than this. He might be down around 1.5 meters, but have a really high force. So we know that the more kinetic energy transfer from the golfer to the club during the downswing, the higher club head speed will be at impact. It's the golfer's muscles that are the source of kinetic energy that makes it out to the club. The ground doesn't provide any energy to the system. The ground allows the muscles to generate more energy, okay? It allows us to get more speed into the system because of our muscles, but it doesn't, none of the energy actually comes from the ground itself. Gravity helps a bit, air resistance hurts a bit, but it's really the golfer's muscles. That's the power source for the golf. Just in the interest of getting to the more practical stuff, we've kind of covered this a little bit. I'm going to jump into how the stack system, how we use that to influence some of those variables, some of those concepts in order to generate club head speed, in order to train some of those things to get more club head speed. And if anybody has any questions, including you, Baden, at any point, please let me know.
Sure. We do have a couple of questions, but I'm thinking that just to keep momentum, maybe we should do them at the end, Sasha. I don't want you to sort of go off on totally different tangent or get dragged in a certain direction if you've got like a really clear path.
Sure.
You want to, is that all right?
Sure. Give me one and I will, if I like it, I'll answer it. And if not, I'll save it till the end. How's that sound?
Okay, well, there's one here from Eric. So what are your thoughts on spikeless versus spiked golf shoes? Do spiked golf shoes allow more power to be transferred into the golf swing?
Yeah, I don't mind answering that one.
Yep.
For tour players, in conditions when it gets wet, or even like on a US Open, where it's very hard and the surfaces can almost get slippery because they're dry, metal spikes are very helpful. Fitzpatrick wears metal spikes. Most of the players on tour, I do consulting with FootJoy, use some aftermarket spikes because it is a very big deal. And it's just not worth risking losing traction. But, if you play in Phoenix, for example, in kind of dry, grippy conditions, the grass is growing fairly well, it's not a big deal at all. I don't see too many amateurs that I play with where the traction elements are a limiting factor in generating speed.
Yeah. As you say, the ground doesn't have energy itself. You just need to have enough traction on it that it allows you to do everything you need to do with the body and with the torso.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We've got a couple more. Do you want me to? I'll keep going here.
Sure.
So, all right. So this is actually related directly to Stack itself. I've noticed that Martin Borgmeyer is using the Stack system with his own TPT driver shaft. Is that something that you guys are going to be doing in the future?
Probably not. That's more
No.
of him trying to be really in tune with his equipment. The adapter we have actually isn't standard, so it's larger than a typical driver shaft or iron shaft. So he would have like a 48-inch blank and would like tip trim it probably like 2 feet or something to like have the diameter fit. But we also cover such a wide range of weight that the effective stiffness of the shaft can go from very stiff when you're doing overspeed to very flexible when you're doing overload. So not something that's worth looking into at all.
Okay. I'm going to try and combine 2 questions here. So there's one gentleman is asking, can someone of 73 years of age increase club head speed without getting injured? And then as a follow-up, what is the single biggest reason that we lose distance as we get older?
Yeah, for sure. I've got a graphic. Of people over the age of 70 have gained speed with the stack system. Definitely.
Yeah.
I've got some great slides to share. Look, if you can, the loads that we've done a lot of research in a lab setting like this, so that the loads you experience are a little bit heavier than the driver forces, and the speeds are a little bit faster. And if you think of the golf club is just one implement. If you play baseball, for example, you take a kid and you say, hey, here's an age-matched golf club, and you say, go swing an age-matched baseball bat, the forces they experience with the baseball bat will be higher than the heaviest settings at the stack. And if you said, hey, I'm going to go play some badminton, let's say you're 73-year-olds and you play badminton, right? The speeds that your joints and your body are moving at when you swing a 100-gram badminton racket are way faster than the lightest setting in the stack. And if you do, if let's say for whatever reason the stack loads become too heavy, and the app knows you're swinging them slower, so it will recommend lighter weights for those heavy settings. So we've got great warm-up routines built in. My father-in-law is 73. He's got a knee replacement, a hip replacement, and he loves training with the stack. Yeah, so if you can, my take home is, if you can play a round of golf and then not be sore 2 days later, or you can hit a bucket of 40 balls and not be sore, then you're probably ready to start stack training. If you play golf once a month and you don't do anything else and you sit around the couch, I probably wouldn't grab the stack. And you're probably also going to be sore if you hit a bucket of balls, right?
Totally. Cool. All right, one more, and then we'll probably keep going. So Tom Lewis, who is a coach on Skilleth and rips it. I think he swings at about 132 mile an hour or something like that. Seriously generates some speed. He's got, what correlation do you normally find the stack system swing speed has to a driver with no ball or a driver with ball swings?
Yeah, there's people tend to fall into two categories. When people start out stacking, the majority of people will swing faster with a ball. So
right.
we will often say, probably, I'm going to guess 20% swing faster without a ball. So much so that they'll email in and say, my radar's broken. I just hit a ball in TrackMan. My club head speed was 120. I took an air swing with the stack radar and it said 110. Your radar's broken. But then, I'll work with tour players and Ben Crane has gained a ton of speed with the stack, and he was the opposite. His air swing, I don't want to throw Ben under the bus here, he's a great guy, but his air swing with the driver was, at the time when we started doing stuff, was say 115. And he'd hit a ball at 112. And he's like, I think, that the ball's slowing down the club head, like it's picking up the measurement of the club head. I'm like, no, that's not the case. Actually went through a series of drills where I had him close his eyes and had the guy at Troubadour, who was, in charge of putting the balls out, randomly remove a ball from the tee or put a ball on. So
Right.
Ben thought there was no ball there, took an air swing, made contact, and saw that his speed is the same. the ball wasn't slowing it down. So, Tom, some folks are one way, some folks are the other way. Most don't see any difference. And usually after some speed training, you learn to swing faster without a ball.
Awesome. All right. Let's keep going, Sasha.
Okay. Thank you for those questions. Were great. Okay, so
there's a few more as well, so we'll try and get to them. We'll leave a couple of minutes at the end.
Okay, great. So variable inertia speed training. So we've got all of these concepts, and what I want to do is, if I'm going to try to have someone get faster, I can work on swing mechanics. Try this, try using the ground like this, try moving the club like this. I could do training, or we could combine them both, and that's what we did with the stack system. So variable inertia speed training is commonly referred to overload or overspeed. Training movement is nearly identical to the in-competition skill. Overload training, we're trying to increase the force stimulus. Over speed training, we're trying to increase the speed stimulus. Very common in track and field and in other sports. So slight uphill running for overload, slight downhill running for overspeed. You can tow a sled for overload. Also, a lot of research into jumping, showing that you can do weighted jumps to jump higher, or assisted jumps, where you actually have a bungee cord or a cable that's making you lighter. Both overload and overspeed have independent effects on the body. So they have different mechanisms by which they can improve your speed. So you don't just want to do one or the other, you want to do both. And we put a lot of research into figuring, well, should you mix them? Should you have slightly more overload or slightly more overspeed? Should you do overload before overspeed? Should you do 2 weeks of one, then 2 weeks of another? And we've got that all sorted out with the stack training. And it's all fundamentally based around the golfer's driver. So we manipulate with the stack. It's not just about saying, hey, let's go a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter. There are three things in any implement we swing that we can manipulate to change the forces the golfer experiences and the speed that they're able to swing that implement at. We've got the mass. So literally you put it on a scale, how much does it weigh? We've got the center of mass location relative to the hands. So that's where the club balances. So you can see here with the driver, it's 83 centimeters from, the butt end of the grip. And then we've also got the moment of inertia. Anybody who's familiar with MOI matching, it's the resistance to change in angular motion. So if we take a look at a stack and we load 280 grams on the stack, we get an overload scenario in all three of these parameters. It's heavier, center of mass location is further from the hands, and the moment of inertia is higher. All of those are going to create a scenario where we're going to swing this slower than the driver, but more importantly, we're going to apply higher forces and torques. It's going to create an overload stimulus. We can then drop down to 20 grams. And now we get a scenario where we have overspeed because all of those parameters are now lower than the driver. So if you increase mass, you're going to swing the implement slower. If you increase the distance the center masses from the hands, you're going to swing that implement slower. If you increase the moment of inertia, you're going to swing it slower. And we can vary all of those by changing the weights on the end of the stack. And we can do that with 30 different weight combinations. That was really important to me when I was telling Marty, look, I want to be able to move people in increments of stimulus by a couple of pounds or by a mile per hour, right? So when you go into the gym and if you're lifting weights, you have those 5 pound, or some gyms are really nice, they have 2.5 pound increments. You wouldn't find a gym that has 3 sets of dumbbells, 20 pounds, 70 pounds, and 140 pounds. This is, if you move them around and you do stuff with them, you'll get stronger, but it's not going to be optimal. And it doesn't allow for a nuanced training program that's individualized to everybody. So that was really important. And we also took time in the lab to figure out what the actual stimulus is. So with all the prototypes we went through to figure out what length to use. So we're not using a driver length. That's for a couple of reasons. The first reason is so we don't stick it in the ground. So when we had the driver length implements, we found a lot of people would stick them in the ground. They didn't really like that. And also shortening this allowed us to get more manipulation of the speed and weight stimuluses, the load stimuluses that we wanted. So here's an example of someone swinging 195 gram stack. You don't need to get too caught up in the details, but what we're doing is we're measuring the actual forces and torques that they're experiencing when they swing the stack. We compare those to the driver, and then that allows us to figure out, right, if someone's driver is this length, and we know the forces they're experiencing if they're swinging it this fast, and we can recommend a load on the stack to get just a little bit more load stimulus. And getting the speed is easy because you just need a radar to figure out the speed stimulus. But to get the overload stimulus correct, we had to do a lot of research. And we're also measuring the ground reaction forces at the same time. So we're not just saying, hey, let's take an implement, let's make it percent lighter, percent heavier. It's much more complex than that. And we get different mechanisms. So the overspeed training mechanism, we're reducing antagonistic co-contraction. So what's really harmful to generating speed, we have muscles that move the club in the backswing direction and mostly a different set of muscles that move it in the downswing direction. If both of those are contracting at the same time, then we're not going to generate as much speed. If I'm trying to flex my arm as fast as I can, that's my bicep. I don't want my tricep contracting too. I want it to be completely shut off. So we learn to reduce that antagonistic co-contraction. We get faster nerve to muscle communication through training, faster contraction within the muscle itself. And then there are mechanoreceptors. There's things in our muscles that say, hey, you know what? We don't usually swing this fast. I think we're going to hurt ourselves. Let's slow down. But if we were training to adapt for that, then the system says, hey, okay, we're adapting. We can go this fast. We're not going to downregulate the system. So these are things that we train with the overspeed stimulus. So this is someone that's swinging at their driver at 125 miles per hour. So they need to load up the stack, swing it at 135 to get that overspeed stimulus. Overload, we have different things we're influencing in the system. We can increase the number of participating muscle fibers. So even though we're swinging it slower, we're still applying the same level of effort as the overspeed. So we can recruit more muscle fibers when we do that. Then that trains those muscle fibers to swing faster. We can get more force. So those muscle fibers learn to produce more force while they're swinging fast. Trains the golfer's ability to apply higher forces in transition and also manage the extra momentum of the higher speed through impact, the higher momentum through impact. And figuring out the load stimulus is a little more complicated, like I just described in the last slide. So no promises. You know, training with the stack is not for the golfer that plays once a week and doesn't want to practice. It's a training program. It works very well, and it's very customized, and it's fun, but you still need to do it. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not, I'm going to go out to the range and, you know, boom, now I've got speed. You have to work on it. And we track our top 5,000 stackers. That's about 10% of our users right now. And most of these folks have been training for at least a year, but with fantastic results. So every swing that a stacker takes, we know the weight they swung goes into the app. We know how much speed they swung because it goes into the app using a radar or some other speed device. And before and after we program, we test your driver speed in the same manner. And we can track how much speed you're improving by. And someone asked, I didn't get the name, babe, but they asked, hey, you know, can you gain speed if you're older? Well, of these 5,000 stackers right now, 871 of them are over the age of 60.
Right.
So certainly there's room for improving your club head speed at any age. And you know, system's been really proven not just for average golfers, but also highly trained golfers. Do you have a question?
No. All good.
Okay, so as we talked about earlier, and as hopefully everybody knows, Matt Fitzpatrick has been a great advocate of the stack system, gained a ton of speed. So I thought it'd be interesting to look. It's always good to know what's everybody else doing, right? So I took in 2002, I found the top 100 in the FedEx Cup rankings and found their club head speed for the season from 2002, right? What was their average club head speed for the season? And then I went back 2 years because that's how long Matt had been training with the stack system. And I said, what was their club head speed in 2020? Say, okay, what's the average tour player doing to improve their club head speed? This is going to become more and more important as the ball gets slowed down. I've got lots of theory on regulating the ball, but to me, it should not make, no one should be confused. You slow the ball down, speed becomes more important. All of a sudden, someone like maybe a Brian Harmon is going to have trouble competing. Other people will just be able to swing faster. Hopefully, Brian keeps training with the stack and adds a ton more speed. But anyway, so we've got what their club head speed was in 2022 on the x-axis here, and then how much their club head speed improved or decreased over the 2 years. There's the red line is 0. What you'll notice is about half lost speed, right? And we see a bunch of people that gain speed. And what's cool is there's Matt Fitzpatrick. He went from 112 to 118. So these are PGA Tour stats where I'm getting these numbers from. So it's 112 to 118. And the second biggest improver was Victor Hovland. So the system is clearly something that even for people that play a lot of golf, are doing everything they can to get faster. Stack system can even move the needle for that. And it's not just the hardware. The fact that we've got 30 different weight combinations is very helpful. But basically, I took all of the same features that a tour player would have when they're working with me to increase their club head speed and baked it into the app. So when I was working with Fitzpatrick at the start, the app wasn't there. I would have a Google Doc spreadsheet, and I'd say, hey, swing these weights and enter the speeds. He's very diligent. He enters everything, tracks everything he does in practice. So this wasn't tough for him. He'd fill in that information, and then I'd say, okay, I'd do some figuring, and I'd say, right, your next workout's going to be this. And I'd enter his next workout in the spreadsheet. And I tell him when that workout was. Well, that's baked into the app. I would also have known what his testing speeds are. Hey, does he swing heavy stuff kind of slow, but light stuff kind of fast? That's going to influence how much overspeed or overload he gets. So in the stack system, we do testing, figure out your force velocity profile. We recommend a program. And then the app really becomes like a personal trainer. Tells you what weight to swing, tells you when to work out. Rest timers pop up. And then it's a training program. So one of the things that I put a big focus on is engagement, motivation. We want people to stick with it. We want it to be enjoyable. And that's one thing that I'm really happy about, the feedback that we've received from it. It's fun, it's engaging, people want to do the workouts. So we got this really cool little interface screen, keeps track of your progress, keeps track of your grit score, how well you're adhering to the program. So people really don't like to see that grit score drop. This is mine. Got a little busy over the summer, Baden. Unfortunately, my grit score dropped.
Right.
Down here, we tell people when their next workout should be, and if it passes that date, then we just give them this really guilty little statement that says, hey, you're losing grit. I'm getting anxiety just looking at this screenshot of myself. And then we track speed records. So we know how fast you've swung every weight. And what's really cool is when you're doing a workout, you can see this screen would have popped up in one of my workouts. And it told me, hey, look, your fastest swing with the 195 is 107. And your fastest set, that's the average, is 105. And then, so as I'm getting to go in the set, I know what my records are. And if I break those during the set, the app cheers. So it's super motivating. And then we can track your speeds in the app. The other thing we have that is really an important piece, especially based on this lecture I'm giving, this webinar, is that it's not just training, but we should be focusing on using the correct mechanics while we're swinging, right? Is there a better way I can use the ground? Is there a better way that I can, interact with the club? And so we built into the app, we call the learning library, which I think, we've got 60 or 70 videos in there that people can use to make their training a little bit more purposeful. Any questions up to now? I'm going to get into some of my favorite speed moves. I have no idea what time it is. So I don't know if we're allowed to go a little bit long, or maybe I'm already in an hour and 45 minutes. I don't know.
Where are we at? Yeah, it's about 10 to, so we're already 50 minutes in, Sasho. So
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
we can probably go a little bit over, sort of thing. That should be fine. But yeah, it'd be great to get some super practical stuff on some technique stuff on sequencing. I think like something I'd love to hear as well is like, what's the biggest misconception you hear? Like, I think something I have heard you talk about is for years, probably people have been trying to get their hands really passive and control the club face, and potentially as a consequence have taken away like one of the biggest, contributors to club head speed. Like, is that something that is a bit of a misconception of like how the hands work?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I could interpret that two ways, Baden. You know, I am an advocate of having the hands be more free, and in fact, that's something I'm going to talk about in the that first video there. The concept is functional lag. So maybe I'll dive into that one, and we could have a little bit of an interaction. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Okay, and maybe I will stop sharing my screen, so that makes it a little bit easier for folks to see what I'm doing for these ones.
Yeah.
So thanks for bearing with me through all the science stuff. But I just wanted everybody to realize that it's super important to realize that everything that I discuss in terms of speed tips or drills has to fit into that theory, that model. It has to fit into the biomechanics. I've seen, we've got 50,000 users. I've probably looked at, I don't know, 1,200 different stackers. If people get really stuck, we have a system, hey, try this. And if people are seeing no progress, they say, send me in a video. Like, there's probably some low-hanging fruit here. So, casting, not maintaining lag is a speed killer, and lots of people are doing it. Okay, so I think people, where does it come from? There's probably a fear that the face isn't going to square up if I don't, get this happening earlier. I got to try to square that face up as early as I can, and not in a way that's actually going to directly manipulate the face, but like, quick, let's get it down here. And if you don't have the proper sequence in transition, I'm still amazed that there's a little bit of debate about this, but you want to get the lower body going first, the upper body adds some speed, the arms are going to come off, and that last angle to open up should be the wrist angle, right? If you do this and then swing, that is just really going to hurt your speed. So one thing that I'll say to folks is let's work on a drill to improve what I call your functional lag. Okay, and it's centered around not holding the club with a death grip and making sure that in transition your hands are a little more passive, but the key is not shut off, not limp. I want folks to imagine that their hands are like springs and you're setting the tension in them. Okay, and those wrist muscles will respond appropriately to however much effort you put in with your body. Okay, so it's not dead and limp, but I'm setting the tension, and I want to feel a little stretch. We're going to exaggerate this. These are the folks that tend to cast. We're going to get to a position where we've got lots of slack in the system, in the back, so we don't want to max everything out. Okay. So for this drill, we're going to feel like we've got lots of slack in the system. We're staying really wide, and we actually want to feel like we're going to drive our hands down at the ball, creating a little bit of a jackknifing effect. Okay, so if you can think of Gary Woodland as a great example of this, he actually does this with his actual swing. And we want to feel like as we start down, I've got that tension set. I'm not squeezing it, but it's a spring. It's got some give to it, but it's going to store some energy. I'm going to feel some pressure build up in that trigger point of that trail index finger. I'm going to feel that force build up, and I want to add some lag as I start down. Okay, so I go really wide, and as my club head's still going up, I want to feel like I add some lag on the way down. So in that sense, the hands aren't really passive. They're actually doing quite a lot, but I don't want them active from the top, right? The great thing about stacking is that you don't have to worry about consequences of negative ball flight working on this. So if you have someone who's casting, or if you're out there who's casting, I shouldn't direct that at the instructor. Anybody out there is casting and you're like, right, I'm gonna work on this and hit some balls. Well, you might top a couple, chunk a couple, and you think, oh, this doesn't work. That's where it's great to do stuff with the stack where you're not focused on, hey, I can make the right movement, generate high club head speed, get that movement pattern built in, and then calibrate with some balls later. And there's probably a little bit of back and forth over time with that.
Well, it's very liberating, I think, isn't it, Sasho, to like not have a club face on the end of it. I think that's really important. So with a club face, that is more likely to cause someone to cast it because, as you said, they're trying to square the face earlier or whatever it might be. Whereas when you remove the face, you remove the consequence. They're more, pardon me, they're more likely to store the energy in the head on the way down and feel like it's going to come around and have that, late hit, as it were, sort of thing. So that's something I've definitely seen. Like when people, use, overspeed training, it's great because like there's no club head. Liberate yourself and just try and swing it as fast as you can. And it actually improves technique. It doesn't, it doesn't take away from it.
Yeah, I see it all the time with my kids. They'll make the move I want them to make. Could be a weight shift, whatever it is, but they hit it off the toe or top it, and immediately I'm trying to ignore the ball. That was what I want you to do. That's really tough. Ignore the ball. Good luck. The 8-year-old's like, no, that was a terrible ball flight. All of us are going to be. We can't ignore that.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Do you want to go into one more little thing that we've probably got about 5 minutes or something left, Sasho. So your next most important probably.
Okay, well, I'll do the lead heel lift. So because we have a lot of golfers, I see that are, our average user is 44, and this would probably apply to the gentleman who was 73. All right, that was one of the questions. What is the biggest, loss? That's probably the range of motion of the swing over time. So I like to see if you're hitting the ball 180 yards, you're probably hitting a lot of fairways. There's a certain segment of the golfing population bunts it down there. Maybe the rough's not too long. They just need more distance. Okay, that is the biggest thing that's going to lower their score. Can you see my feet? Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
So one thing we can do is lift the lead heel in the backswing to add a little bit more hand pathway. And it's not a cosmetic. So let's say I swing to here. This is something to be aware of when you work on this. I just don't want to lift the heel for lifting the heel's sake. I want to feel like that heel comes off the ground to allow more hip turn in the backswing. So if I want to get my hands higher, I have to lift my lead heel. That's going to give me a bit more rotation in the backswing. Okay, that's the first thing that's key. Just lift the heel for lifting the heel's sake. It's to give me more hand pat length. The next thing that's critical is it needs to plant before the club or the hands start down. So if you're doing this drill with the stack, you want to feel like your lead heel is planting actually while your hands are still going back. Okay? And you want to think about crushing a pop can or stomping on a bug with that lead heel as the hands are going back. So as my backswing's finishing, I plant that lead heel. That is going to get a big stretch in the muscles that are going to drive the downswing, those obliques. It's also going to be a great trigger to have my lower body starting first. And I see a lot of folks lift their heel, hands come down to here, then they plant. Well, there was no point in having that lead heel lifted at all.
Interesting. Is there, I suppose, at what point is there too much motion? Or, I suppose that's just something you need to monitor yourself a little bit, like where,
So let me say this. One of the things that is the biggest the biggest cause of dispersion. If I have a bigger dispersion than you, Baden, it's because my face to path variability is higher than yours. I'm assuming hopefully folks on here know about launch monitors and measuring face angle. If my dispersion's bigger, I have trouble controlling the face. Well, someone hitting a 30-foot putt repeatedly will have about the same face to path variability as someone hitting their driver. That's a big one to swallow. So what it means is, are you really going to, if going from this full driver swing as hard as you can has barely any influence on your face to path variability relative to this motion, if you're trying to hit a 30-foot putt, then why would removing a little bit of degrees of freedom from the system really have that much influence, right?
Yeah.
When we go all the way down to neutralizing everything, it doesn't really move the needle in terms of face to path variability. So, look, if it's not adding speed, if it adds 1 mile per hour and you feel like you're more wild, don't do it. But something like lifting the lead heel, I just don't see it as being the number of people that if you watch Johnny Miller, Jack Nicklaus with those tiny little persimmon heads, they were lifting that lead heel like crazy.
That's really interesting. That's mind blowing. That stat. That is really, really crazy. I think, we just see it more and more these days. Like motions are probably like contrary to what was happening maybe during the 90s and 2000s. Like motions are getting bigger again, aren't they? Sort of thing.
Look, just compare what Schauffele did to go from a 175 mile per hour player to a 185 mile per hour player to win his majors. There were other things, don't get me wrong, but while he did that, massive jump in ball speed versus a Nick Faldo, who was, love Nick, great golfer, but he was out there hitting marshmallows at, his big guy, but boy, there was nothing dominating about his club hit speed. Things have changed.
Totally. Okay, we've got a couple more questions. We probably better wrap this up pretty quickly, though. Can we stay on this webinar forever is a question from Mark. What we are going to do is obviously I'm going to send a recording out. I might even send a bunch of these questions to you as well, Sasho, just because we probably won't be able to get through them, and potentially you could even, respond to some of these people. But what we're also going to do is there is going to be an offer for Stack System. I will send that out with, what was the discount code? I think you said.
Skillist.
Yeah, it's Skillist. So there's a discount code that's going to be valid for the next about 10 days or something like that. I think, Sasha, when you get your Stack System, you get 25% off, which is unbelievable. So everyone can go and participate in that. But we might actually have to wrap it up there, unfortunately, Sasha. We've just gone over time a little bit. But thank you so much for your time. That was absolutely incredible. And hopefully in the future, you'll be able to help people on Skillist as well, and we can continue the relationship.
Awesome. Thanks. Apologize. I didn't get to more practical stuff. It's the scientist in me. Yeah.
We love it. We absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time, Sasha.
Okay.